The warmest of greetings to you, and welcome to Happily Ever Teaching. This is the podcast to help you enthrall your learners in every subject under the sun using the best teaching method known to science, storytelling. To do this, we feature special guest educators who are passionately keen for your children to become amazing and successful human beings. I am storyteller Chip Cahoon, and with me today is...
Hi, I'm Rob. I teach a Key Stage 2 class just outside Milton Keynes, and I've worked throughout all the Key Stages.
Hi, I'm Helen. I also teach just outside Milton Keynes, and I'm currently teaching reception in Year 1.
And today we are exploring English learning outcomes with a witty folktale found all around the world, adapted by us to be set in medieval England. You can listen to the story by downloading our sister podcast, Fables and Fairy Tales, or search our website, epictales.co.uk, for The Dragon's Heart. There you'll find a video of me telling the story that you can share with your children. And if you sign up as an Epic Educator, you'll also get a copy as an ebook or paperback illustrated by the magnificent Maria Coelho, as well as the full audiobook for you to download at any time. There are even some tips for telling the story yourself, and a whole heap of resources to go with the lesson ideas we're about to discuss, including any extra lesson ideas that we don't have time to fit into this podcast. Right now, though, let's continue our discussion with Helen, Rob, and Sir Fuladred, and not forgetting the U-Dragon, as we begin to explore the English. Rob, do you want to kick us off today? What English have you found for ages 7 to 11?
I found 3 different activities.
3?
3, yeah. Power of 3.
Is that one of the activities?
It's linked to it, yeah. Adjective bank.
Okay.
There are lots of examples of adjectives used in the story to describe all the different characters and the different settings that Sir Fuladred encounters, and quite often his description of the places that he gets to or goes through or has to rush through are much more detailed than the dragons, which is because he said, "Tell me quickly." And I thought it would be a great opportunity to expand your children's descriptive vocabulary by just building up a bank of all these different words and giving them like an idea of matching those words to a person or a kind of person or a situation or a place, so that you could say, oh, we've just gone through a kind of river, what could it be like? And rather than going wet, which I know that some of my children definitely would do.
Wet river.
Yeah. They could then,
and they'd be right.
Well, of course they're right, but there are much more interesting and descriptive words to use. So that would be the first, and that could be like an activity that you could use not only with this story, but you could have it on display all the time, and you could just add more and more to it. So you've got a great resource in your classroom or in a library or a shared area where you've got all these wonderful, powerful words that you can use.
And I think the real value of this story in covering that sort of activity from the start is that it really helps children to see the value of adjectives and expanded noun phrases, because if you do just say river, you may well have a river in your head and you know exactly what it's like, but it's through the adjectives that you communicate the differences. So a lot of it's about sharing the whole point of using adjectives and things, isn't it?
Yeah. And there's one point where he even says, oh, I should have used an expanded noun phrase.
Well done for spotting that.
Yeah, he's picked up
a very well-educated dragon.
Yeah.
And I like how explicit that is from the start of this story. You know, the expanded noun phrases are so important from the very beginning when we're talking about Sir Fuladred and what he wants to be like and what he actually is like. I think they're so central to the story that you absolutely have to teach about them.
Do you know what? I hadn't even picked that out myself.
There you go. I have my uses.
Storyteller's foible, we put in 3 descriptive words because that's what storytellers have been doing for yonks. But it does make all the difference, doesn't it?
Absolutely, right from the start.
My next activity is telling the story from the dragon's point of view.
Ooh, I like the sound of this.
So you would have to explore the fact that we don't know about Sir Fuladred's character from the very beginning, and we don't know about the fact that he's sent himself on this quest. But it would be a good way to, from the U-Dragon's point of view, sorry, I should make that clear, not the Is it
Not the
demagogue?
demagogue, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Demagogue,
you
yeah.
could also write it from the demagogue's point of view.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it would be quite interesting to explore the emotions that the dragon feels throughout the journey, like from being captured to going, oh my goodness, what's this person going to do with me? To hang on,
He's
Yeah.
not very smart.
yeah, I can save a whole load of energy here.
Yeah.
A bit like if you told the Gruffalo from Gruffalo's point of view from the start, not from the mouse's point of view. So just to see it from a different perspective.
They are actually very similar stories, aren't they?
Yeah.
Where you have I suppose in a way, the Gruffalo is kind of Sir Fuladred from the U-Dragon's point of view.
Yeah.
You can certainly look at it that way, can't you? But yeah, flipping it around, if you look at Mario Coelho's magnificent illustration of the end of the story, amongst the characters that you'll see there is Sir Lancelot, who is the only one who is not celebrating the return of Sir Fuladred. So there again, you have another, to tie it back to your PSHE from yesterday, you can tell the story from all sorts of different points of view and see the impact it has on those characters.
Yeah, yeah.
Or the impact they have on each other.
This is a wonderful thing about stories. Why children, you should have more than 2 characters in a story. And my final idea was, and this would probably be aimed more kind of year 5, year 6, at upper end of Key Stage 2, is looking at dragons in literature. So what characteristics do they have that are the same? What is different about them? Which different dragons do we know about from different stories? Are they always represented as, or what kind of character do they represent? Are they a good character or a bad character? The dragon that I thought of first off when I was thinking of this idea was Smaug from The Hobbit.
Yeah.
And then second was the series of books, How to Train Your Dragons, or How to Train a Dragon. So are they similar kind of dragons in that? There's obviously this story, there's Sir George and the Dragon. They come up all over the place. You could kind of almost link it to the Lindworm. I don't know if we've talked about the Lindworm yet.
I was wondering if you were going to do that. Yeah, because the Lindworm is also technically a form of dragon, isn't it?
Yeah. I wasn't sure if I was allowed to, whether that would be a spoiler or not, but it sounds like it is.
We did cover it a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. And then I finally turned back to the dragons in Harry Potter as well. I couldn't believe that I hadn't mentioned them earlier. You could also look at film representation of dragons, so from The Sword and the Stone, the Disney film.
Yeah.
When the evil witch turns into a dragon, what kind of character is that?
And Pete's dragon as well.
Yeah.
In fact, the more examples you're citing, it's making me realise that in recent years, let's say the last century really, there's been a tendency to have dragons and instantly put them in contrast to what you'd expect their character to be. So, from folklore, we have dragons as the enemy, the bad guys, the ones who are eating the princesses and so on. And for the last 100 years, pretty much every single dragon has been met with that sort of stereotype and had something to counter it, which is really interesting.
Yeah. I would potentially, just whilst we've been talking, thinking, I would show probably pictures of the dragons from Game of Thrones. I wouldn't show them any of the footage, but like some of the images of the dragons doing various dragon things.
Dragony things, yeah.
It's a shame you can't show those images, and I very much appreciate why you can't. But if you think about it, if you are a Game of Thrones fan, what you get from the use of dragons there is that they really represent the character of Daenerys right down to a T. She is this very proud and regal kind of character, but she is also very unstable, and she has this power that she can't quite control at the very end. That's why I absolutely love the end of Game of Thrones, which I know is a very controversial opinion, but I think it ended perfectly from a storytelling point of view. It was a perfect ending.
Final dragon or dragons that I'm going to mention are in a book called Again, and this is a book by Emily Gravett.
Oh, I don't know this one.
It's a wonderful book. I enjoy it, and we did some work for World Book Day recently, and this was one of the books that I shared with the school. It involves a mummy dragon at the end of the day and a baby dragon who would like a story read to help send it to sleep. And the story finishes and it says, "Can I have it again?" And the mum's going, oh, okay. The mummy dragon is absolutely exhausted. And she changes the story 2 or 3 times to be like, okay, I'm getting more and more tired. Eventually she falls asleep, and the baby dragon keeps on saying, again, again, again. And he slightly changes colour, and he's green to start off with. He turns red, and eventually he kind of explodes with, again. And the last couple of pages in the book have got a hole in them, and the back cover as well, as if the dragon has burnt through the actual book as well.
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah. So, that's my literacy ideas. I think I've covered a spag, a topic, and some themes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Are there any of those, Helen, that you would be able to pinch and modify for ages 4 to 7?
There definitely are a couple of overlaps in our literacy this week. I'll start with where Rob just finished with the dragons. There's so much you can do with dragons in literacy lessons, in English lessons. The take I took on it is just similar but slightly different in that I thought of when Sir Philadred was looking up about which dragon, he found out that there was the smallest dragon. And I thought, well, what would that book look like? An information book about dragons. So I thought this was a good opportunity to do some non-fiction report writing with the children and to learn about, very similar to, as Rob was saying, learn about some different types of dragons. And starting with the yew dragon. And maybe I would have almost a model text for the children pitched at whatever level, whatever age you're teaching, written about the yew dragon, set out as a fact file, as a page of the book. So you'd say, oh, this is one page of Sir Philadred's book, and the children would enjoy just reading that as a reading activity because dragons are fascinating. So you read that through, you pick out the features of a page of a non-fiction book, and then the children create their own dragons or find out about different dragons. And again, similarly to Rob, I was thinking of how to train your dragon, just because there's a lot of images of those types of dragons, dragons from that book around that children of the age I teach would really engage with. So I thought you could use those dragons and then find out a bit about them, and children could write their own fact files, and you could create a whole class dragon book.
You've got plenty of opportunities to research this. I'll just throw in here, the yew dragon is an actual type of dragon. There is, I think it's a Chinese legend. The yew dragon is the very first dragon. I don't know if it's actually represented quite so small. The reason why it ends up small in this story is because I have a puppet yew dragon, which I sometimes bring out to help me share the story, especially with smaller ones. And so the yew dragon, YU, is something you would be able to go out there and get some information on. But turning to Chinese literature and also Norse literature, you will find whole families of dragons, like the lindworm and the other worms and the wyverns that we've mentioned previously for the lindworm story.
Just on that as well, we at home recently finished watching Shang-Chi and the Legend of Ten Rings, which is from the Marvel universe, and that is set in China, I think. And one of the dragons in there looks completely different to how us as Westerners would expect dragons to look. So if you haven't seen it, or if you just want to Google some of the images, you'll see that the dragon in that looks completely different to the kind of dragon that we as Westerners would expect to see.
Yeah.
I'm going to briefly add to the non-fiction report writing, just a very brief addition. Something I think I've probably talked about before. With younger children, a good thing to do is to get them to create their own dragons for non-fiction report writing. So you've learnt about lots of different dragons, learnt their features and their diets and their habitats. But sometimes what's really nice is for children to create their own dragon. And you could do this in a separate art lesson. You could make it out of clay. You could draw it. They could anyway, because then the facts they can completely make up, which takes the pressure off the facts when they're doing their writing. Because something I find with young children particularly is that it really holds them up. Like if they're trying to write a non-fiction report, but they don't know, they can't think of enough facts, then it just doesn't really work if you're trying to focus on the skills of the writing. So if they have their own dragon to write about, that takes it all away because they can make up the facts and take a bit of ownership of their dragon. So.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting if you've done the other activity first, a bit of research to see how much they are influenced by dragons that they have explored. I always find when doing similar activities with children myself, how there is such a quick tendency for someone to suggest a dragon that breathes ice, just because they see, dragons breathing fire and think, well, there must be an alternative. Oh, well, just go to the other extreme.
Yeah. And there's one in a book somewhere, Cinder the bubble blowing dragon, a dragon that blows bubbles. Just throwing that one out there.
There's also a dragon which serves soup, lives on the moon.
Oh, okay.
And the clangers.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know the clangers.
Don't know that one.
You don't know the clangers?
Showing your age here, Rob.
Yeah.
Know of the clangers.
Know of the clangers, yeah.
There's a soup dragon in the clangers.
Yeah. There you go. We're learning a lot. I think we're learning a lot this morning.
We really are.
Yeah. So when I was reading this story and got to the part with Sir Fuladred's journey following the dragon through the sticky, slimy trees and all the terrible things he has to go through, an immediate link in my head was made with Michael Rosen's wonderful book, We're Going on a Bear Hunt.
Yes.
So for my second literacy type activity, we're going to go on a dragon hunt. A friendly dragon hunt, focusing more on the journey than the outcome. So it'd be great if children could go outdoors for this, preferably go on a walk. If from a health and safety point of view, maybe not, but it'd be great if they could be barefoot. Depends on your school's policies on these things, because we're going to go on a very sensory dragon hunt. Outdoors, we're going to find lots of different environments to walk through. Again, we might need shoes for some of it, but maybe for like the fresh green grass, we could have bare feet and, go through a muddy puddle or something with bare feet. It'd be fine. So take your children on a bit of a journey, and you can, of course, set this up if you wanted to outdoors, set up the journey. So set up an area that's wet, set up an area of sand, which would be a really nice thing to do, because then you can guarantee the children are going to have lots of different sensory experiences. We're very fortunate at our school to have a forest school that at the moment has lovely long grass and very green trees. So I'm thinking you spend a while outdoors going on a dragon hunt, eliciting all the lovely language from the children as they go, because the best way to get that descriptive language is for the children to experience it, not just to sort of see a picture of it, but to really experience it. So that was my next English activity, to start by generating the words and then building a map of the journey and orally telling a bit of a dragon hunt. We're going on a dragon hunt. We're going to catch a shiny green one.
And the great thing about doing that sort of activity is that a lot of the time, I don't know whether you find this, but especially with the younger children, maybe the 4 to 6 year olds, the sorts of responses you'll get to, what does this feel like, are things like or ooh, there. But the thing is, those sounds do make their way into the kind of words that you would use to describe these. So if you get a yuck, that's kind of there in the squelch. If you have well, that's kind of there in ooze. So you can really start to make a link between the phonics and the actual words. It's kind of like phonic etymology, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to help children to make the link between what they're feeling and the words. And then with this slightly older children of this age range, they could do some writing of a verse or more of this story. So with the younger children, I would definitely write it down, but I would do it together with me writing it and the children come out with the words. So they've made a story, but lots of modelled writing. And then with the maybe year 1, year 2 type children, they could do some of the writing themselves using that familiar pattern of we're going on a bear hunt.
Fantastic.
The end.
So shall we start going on a maths hunt?
Yes.
We're not scared.
We're not scared. What a mathematical day.
That's sadly all we have time for in this episode, folks. If you'd like to talk to us about anything you've heard in this podcast, or if there's a subject you're soon to teach that you'd like us to cover, you can find us on social media using @TeachHappily, or leave us a review using your favourite podcast app. Please also share this podcast with your colleagues and help us start a story-led revolution in classrooms around the world, so children everywhere can learn in a way that's effective, memorable and enjoyable all at the same time. Tomorrow, Sir Fuladred and the U-Dragon will help us teach maths. But right now, it only remains for us to say cheerio, and we hope to hear your story soon. So, cheerio! And we hope to hear your story soon.